Great. Welcome everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to get started at 12:05. So we're giving everyone 5 minutes to let everyone in, but we'll get started in about 5 minutes. In the meantime, my name is Dia. I am from Birdie. Welcome everyone. While we're waiting, if you could let us know in the chat if you have applied to tenders in the last 6 months, just using the chat to let us know. It would be great to know and get a feel for how many pros we have on this already in the room. So please let us know. Great, let's see here. Okay. We have some chat. Let's see. Let's see on the chat. You can also let us know in the Q&A box.
And as Dia said, hi to everyone who's just coming in and joining us now. So we will be starting at 5 past for those of you who are joining. Just to say, my name is Lucy and I'm also from Birdie. So we've got a couple of birdies on the call, which sounds a bit wrong, but that's it is what it is. So yeah, so just say we'll be starting at 5 past. We're just giving a bit of time to let people join. So yeah, really excited to have all of you join us on this. Should be a fun lunchtime.
Yeah, thank you so much for your answers. We do see some of you have had a chance to apply to tenders recently. The chat is now enabled, so you can also use the chat. Sorry for that. Thank you for bearing with us. We will get started in about 3 more minutes, just giving everyone some time to join.
Hello everyone, it's so nice to see your messages in the chat. That's so cool.
I hope everyone's having a nice day. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Yes, of course. Yeah, it always catches you by surprise, that switch from morning into afternoon.
Indeed. Welcome. We still see a few more people trickling in. So like I said, we will get started in 2 minutes. If you just joined us, welcome again.
Hello everyone. Yeah, this should be a really good sort of webinar covering all things council tenders. We've made sure to get one of the best tender riders here for you today. So really looking forward to that presentation, and yeah, just really great to have all of you here, and appreciate you taking the time to learn a bit more about them.
Wonderful. Yes, we have a nice group already. So in just another minute, we will get started. If you can let us know in the chat if you had applied to tenders in the last 6 months, it'd be great to know, to get the feel for the room if you just joined us. And we'll get started in just under a minute here. Welcome. Hello. I can see a few of you had tenders. Some of you haven't. Hopefully today's webinar will be helpful to everyone. Great. Perfect. So It is 12:05, so let's get started. I want to thank everyone again for joining us today. We have a very exciting webinar and amazing speakers. Before jumping right in here, a couple of things to note. The session will be and is being recorded alongside with some of, and we will be sending this recording to you along with some other assets in a follow-up email. It should be in your inboxes tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. We will try to reply to all of your questions at the end of this session, so please use the Q&A box for that. We will go through some questions at the end. As we mentioned before, this webinar is in partnership with Tenders UK. So we'll have great information for you from Tenders UK. Please don't forget to answer the survey at the end of the webinar, as it helps us to continuously improve these types of events. Wonderful. So the webinar will be delivered by my colleague Lucy from Birdie and Cliff Daulby from Tenders UK. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Cliff.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucy. First off, I'll just share my screen and hope that I get that right. Can you confirm that you're seeing that okay?
Not yet.
Oh.
Not yet. Here we go.
Perfect.
Okay, so bear with me a minute. Right, brilliant. So thank you everyone for coming today, and my warmest welcome to you all. Just to start off with, I've been asked to give an overview on bid management and tender writing. There is a lot to cover, and I could fill an hour to 2 hours on each subject. So this will be mainly an overview on, perhaps in the future, if I'm asked to come back again, delve into some other areas in more deeper detail. That depends obviously on how well I do today. So I'll begin with introducing Tenders UK and myself. Then I'll be covering through the basics of how council tenders work, what councils look for in a potential tender winner, how to write a successful domiciliary care tender, how to bid for domiciliary care tenders, what to avoid when preparing and writing a tender, and how to be ready for success when you win your first tender. And as mentioned, I believe there's some questions that will be asked at the end. So who is Tenders UK? We established, going back in 2018, Mark Frost, who originally set up the business, used to work for an organisation called PERA, who helps us secure innovation and research and development grants for the EU. He identified a need for small and medium-sized companies who wanted to grow within the public sector, but did not have the resources to compete with the larger organisations with their in-house writing teams. So Tenders UK was born. We've since grown to be one of the largest tender writing bid management companies within the UK. We have a team of 20 staff who comprise of bid managers and writers. We approximately win around 84% of the bids. So for every 5 bids that we do, we'll win 4 out of the 5 for our clients, securing business going into the 6 billion mark figure. Then you have me. I'm a very competitive person. I like to win things. I'm not saying I'm very competitive, but I can even turn a cooking on Sunday into a competition with my partner. I am the lead for the social care department for Tenders UK, and I've been working for over 10 years in the sector. There's not much I haven't seen, to be quite honest. The one good thing about working across the whole of the UK, you can see a lot of common trends and different service delivery models and what works and what doesn't work. Over the 10 years also, I've seen the quality bar continually increasing and it becoming more competitive. And the service itself is always continually evolving. So why do we have to bid in the first place? The very basic answer is the commissioning or the commissioner has a problem they would like to fix, and they are looking for a solution. Also, it's the law. Government, we the people, decided it's the fairest way to commission contracts rather than taking backhanders or someone you know. This way, we have the transparency on government and local, on how government and local authorities spend taxpayers' money, our money. Other reasons include the changing needs. For example, we've just recently had a pandemic, and there were certain services that needed to be added very quickly. Increases in demand with aging population, meaning increase in demand with dwindling budgets. Obviously, they need to change things and how things and new approaches. The change in delivery models or the way we do things, which could be driven by national governance or different things like the Care Act, which has evolved, and more recently the Healthcare Act 2022, which built on the Care Act, now enables the development of integrated care systems, which amongst other developments will result in the replacement of the clinical commissioning group by the Integrated Care Board, and which will be responsible for commissioning, for example, the NHS contracts with defined geographical areas. It's also an opportunity to roll out new initiatives such as strength and asset-based approaches, putting the service user at the centre of the service and working towards outcomes, as well as working within the community itself. Also, it's an opportunity for local authorities to change the way that they're actually procuring the contract. And there's different types of contracts, which you probably may be aware of. I don't know if you've heard of DPS, which is a dynamic purchasing system, which is a form of framework where they look to bring multiple providers onto a framework. And sometimes these frameworks will periodically open throughout the year or be permanently open for providers to join at any time. Other types of frameworks could be like a ranked framework, where dependent on how well you score, depends on how high up the list you go as regards to first refusal on any packages that are coming through. And another form of contract will be where local authorities look to zone into community areas, large geographical areas, in some cases, or a mixture of the two, where they'll have a lead provider and then a second tier underneath. So what is the council looking for? This is a term that you'll probably see on a lot of tenders, most economically advantageous tender. What that actually means is basically they're putting a sort of weighting on the quality and price. So they're not just simply looking at the price. Typically within social care, you'll see a quality score of around 60% and the pricing side being around 40%. One of the new additions within all tenders now is local authorities need to have a social value aspect to the tender, which can make up 10%, which again is a standalone topic, which I could talk hours about. But this can be all demonstrated through, for example, your skills, the staff training, existing skills within the team, and even staff retention. How you're going to resource a contract covering recruitment, again, staff retention, job satisfaction, career development, conditions and pay, and also things like sponsorship for staff internationally, which is coming into tenders as well. Added value and value for money is something we see in the scoring criteria quite often from time to time. For example, what can you do above and beyond the specification itself as regards to added value? This could include specialist training, specific roles within your team, maybe helplines or community hubs or walk-in centres. Again, these are things that you can bring as an added value above and beyond what the specification is. Value for money, again, local authorities are always looking for ways of bringing as much value to the service as they can with tightening budgets. So working towards outcomes, reducing reliance on care, reducing double-handed care to single care packages, accessing the community, preventing bed blocking, and reducing admissions into hospital, just to name a few. And again, technology obviously is always evolving. So what sort of innovations can you bring to the service? Core monitoring systems, monitoring KPIs, measuring progress of service user outcomes is a big thing now. Obviously, EMR sheets to provide a safer service. And a big one is, again, around sharing information across multidisciplinary teams and other stakeholders. Another thing around innovation could be the assistive technology, for example, pendants and telehealth. Again, just naming a few. But the most important thing is that you keep abreast with any new technology that is available. And another thing I've seen tenders coming out for is wellbeing apps, which again is more around that prevention side of the service. So what they are looking for is for you to be the answer to their problems. And to do this, we need to identify what their problems are and come up with the ideal solution. So what happens when they get it right? All these fantastic things, we get the innovation, knowledge sharing, value for money, partnering, performance measurements, collaboration, and of course, return on their investment. And what happens when they get it wrong? I've got a lovely picture that depicts this. Condemnation. The picture depicts an angel leading a poor soul, in this case the provider, to a whole world of pain. To explain, I've seen commissioners get it wrong in the past. One particular local authority was integrating their social care and CCG together, and they decided to divide it into large patches, over 3,000 hours per week for each local area. And what that did is basically exclude all the smaller companies who were the actual core provision for that contract. The result was service users were put at risk, and larger companies trying to take over and were failing to recruit. The end result, which is what happens across many authorities in this situation, is they end up then forced to add a second tier as the lead provider could not cope. So how do we bid for domiciliary care tenders, and what should we be doing? There are a few stages we need to look at, and one thing we can never be is too prepared. So how can we prepare? Most important thing here is understanding the marketplace, and I've got horizon scanning, which is something we do, which is understanding when the tenders are likely to come out. And again, it's very important to do your own market research, and this can be done for a number of ways, by doing specific searches around the council meetings. I mean, I've done searches before where I've actually found out exactly how they're going to procure a contract a year before it's even due to come out. Other ways you can do this is through freedom of information requests. I've just had literally a client email me just before this call asking me to do that on a local authority because he's interested to know what their rates are going to be. So what are the sorts of questions we can ask? Is what type of framework is it going to be? Is it going to be a DPS, a single provider, or something in between? Who are the actual incumbents of the contract at the moment? Will there be any changes in the approach? What are the rates? And are there any specialist requirements? For example, do you require CQC ratings, overall good, or something to that? So what can we do to get ahead? Before tendering, obviously, the most important thing is making sure that your CQC stays good overall as much as possible. But other things we can be doing is such, for example, gathering case studies on reducing reliance on care and building those case studies up. Other case studies could be accessing the community and forging partnerships with third sector organisations. Suggesting running pilots on new initiatives and working with the local authority. Having also building up sort of mechanisms so that you can start taking on more referrals or taking on more complex care packages that no one else wants. It's important that you start doing these things now rather than when the tender comes live, because the question always comes across, well, why couldn't you have done that previously? So if you can start doing these things and building up those mechanisms in place before the tender goes live, you're way ahead of the game. So building up capacity is important if you're going into a new area. And the other thing to bear in mind is obviously the size of the contract itself. So obviously, if you have to be double the turnover of the contract that you're actually bidding for. In some cases, that does require maybe setting up a consortium bid with a neighbour provider in some cases, so that you can actually bid and not be excluded from the procurement. It's always worth looking out for the PINs, prior information notices, telling you when the bid is likely to come out. That said, I've had a client once phone me up in January saying the tender comes out in September, we want you to work with us on this. And then it was another 18 months before the bid came live. So you can't always rely on it 100%, but I would say 80% of the time they do run as they plan to. The other thing to look out for is market engagements. I think, again, this is a very important time for the provider to be able to voice their opinions and be able to shape the actual procurement itself. And again, it's very important that you actually attend market engagements when you can. When the tender goes live, it's too late to ask those sort of questions, as we were talking about earlier. And any questions that you do ask then have to go through the portal. So as a form of a clarification, and everyone will see it because it has to be a transparent process. Again, I get a lot of companies approaching me asking for help on tenders. One of the things that's very important is, first of all, you need to go through the specification and check to see if you are able to bid or not to bid. And the sorts of things that you need to be looking for within the spec is the rates, are they sustainable? Sometimes it might be a fixed rate and 100% quality. And other times, obviously, you might be able to pick what price you put in. Other things, for example, does it require an office in the area? and again, things like CQC requirements, other specialist requirements such as clinical leads or registered nurses occasionally comes up. And as I mentioned earlier, about turnover requirements and so on. So once you've got that confirmation that you want to go ahead and bid for a tender, you go into the production planning. So who's going to be writing? How long will it take? To give you some sort of guideline, it takes between, you're looking at between 3 to 4 pages per day for a writer to write a response. So you have to allow enough time for any writing to be done. And obviously, the more complex the questions, even longer sometimes. So really, it's about how many, certainly for the smaller companies out there, do you have enough weekends and evenings while still doing the daytime job? So you do need to plan who's doing what. So writing a successful domiciliary care tender or supported living or anything of that nature, most important thing again is looking through the specification. I'm going to go through with you how we mark up tenders later, which will help with that. But it is important to have a detailed read through and also check the scoring criteria as well on how they're actually going to score the questions and responses. Again, it's also important to be inquisitive, do your own research above and beyond what they're telling you in the specification. For example, I was looking at a tender in the Midlands, which had an unusual amount of safeguarding questions. And so I did my own research, identified that they had the highest safeguarding issues in the UK. And the two main concerns were around medication and bed sores. And in fact, there was a fatality. So you can understand why it was important to them. One of the challenges with that particular tender, there were only 300-word responses, so we didn't have a lot of space. So it's important that we were concise and we knew exactly what the commissioner was looking for. Other things to consider is, one of the things we do is we have a workshop strategy meeting. We go through what we identify as being the key themes of the bid and work out what your unique selling points are. So again, we can make sure that we're aligned to the needs and of the commissioner and obviously show that added value. An area that a lot of companies when writing a tender tend to not spend as much time on is structuring the actual responses themselves before you actually put the content in. And again, I'll go through a little bit of how we break those questions down. But it's important that you cross-reference any sort of compliance within the specification across into the questions themselves and break the questions down. Again, workshopping the questions is always an advantage. Talking to people within the team, again, we have a unique advantage as we don't know our clients. So again, having those conversations around the questions and exploring obviously the different sort of case studies and examples that we can use. And again, obviously talking about production, as discussed, obviously planning that production. Things like, for example, the evaluation, who's actually going to evaluate the work. It's always good to have someone outside of the process reviewing it, identifying where there's any gaps, and obviously allowing enough time for rework and that doing a final review and leaving plenty of time actually for the submission itself. So I was also asked to identify things that go wrong when writing a tender. And I've listed a few, although there are quite a few pitfalls, not including attachments. But in most cases, tender portals don't let you do that because you can't submit until you've answered all the questions and submitted all the attachments. But again, it's always wanted just to have a compliance checklist to make sure that you're including everything that they've asked for within the tender. Not following procedures, simple things like size of text and margins on pages, if to use attachments or not, or cross-referencing, etc. And not signing the submission itself, I believe it or not, that has happened, or even policies like your health and safety policy. I've had I heard of a company actually who sent in the they were incumbent and they sent in the health and safety policy without a signature at the bottom, and unfortunately didn't actually regain their contract. Again, allowing enough time. To give you an example, I had a client, we've been working on a bid for over 6 weeks. He was responsible for the financial template, and I've been prompting him from day one to make sure that he uploads it with plenty of time. And he gave me a phone call 15 minutes before the actual deadline submission saying, where do I put the financial templates? I literally died on the spot. I did actually manage to get it submitted with only 3 seconds to spare, but I had to take the rest of the day off. Word counts again is another area. One of the services we offer is evaluations on people's work, and I've read work where it's been 1,000 words response. I've read through the first 500 words and they still haven't actually answered the question, and then gone on another extra 1,000 words, 500 words over the word count. So pretty much half the answer isn't going to be answered or scored. But the most common thing is not answering the question, which is what I'll attempt to do a quick overview for you on now. So how do you break down tender questions? Now, this is something that we use as a tool when marking up tenders, documents, as well as the actual questions. And we color code it so we can see certain things. And so anything that's an instruction or a compliance, we color red, highlight it red. Anything that the buyer thinks matters to them, things like, for example, if they're mentioning enablement or outcome focused or community and so on and so on. Again, we highlight those, and it builds up a picture where we can actually start to see what the key themes are. And then the final thing is we colour things green, where we need to have more understanding. So if there's something that we're not too sure on, we will highlight it green, or if the signposting out of the tender documents, etc. Again, it requires additional research. So this is an example of a question which I've highlighted. So it says, please provide details of your proposed service delivery / care pathway model, describing with practical examples. Now, notice I've highlighted practical examples. Again, it's important because you quite often will get a company where they'll put one example in, but they are asking for multiple examples, not just one. And again, it's breaking down the actual question so you can see it more clearly. It goes on to different bullet points, how you will ensure outcomes outlined in the section 2 of the service specification. So again, that's directing you back to the specification. I need to pull that out, put that into my response, and again, structure that within the answer to obviously cover capturing, recording, and the use, how it's going to be used on a day-to-day basis. And they've also included another bullet point then, which asks how you intend to deliver the service for the duration of the contract. And this particular one, within the specification, they had a 5-year development plan, which again, you needed to integrate into the answer. So how to be ready for success when you win? It's always a good time, but also can be very stressful. So again, it comes back to the planning. In some cases, this can be part of the procurement process itself, where they ask you to provide a mobilisation plan. Sometimes it can be in the presentation stage. So planning your mobilisation obviously will help when it comes to starting the contract. So things that you need to look for or include within the mobilisation will be, for example, who's actually going to be part of that mobilisation team and what resources do you have. This is just a quick example. You've got your managing director, project planner, someone who's going to be in charge of the policies and protocols, someone in charge of recruitment and training, and someone who's going to be implementing things onto the ECM. Another area to consider is what risks are involved with the mobilisation itself. And again, I've just put together an example risk mitigation plan. And basically what it covers is what the likelihood, what the severity could be, and what the overall risk would be. And generally what you do is you times the likelihood and the severity together to give you the overall risk. If you look at the risks, again, these are just examples and not fully put all the detail in, but it just gives you some idea. For example, if staff don't TUPE over, so what additional resources are you going to be able to provide, which will control that risk? And as you can see on the far right hand side, you've got a control risk, which shows it being reduced quite considerably because you've got extra resources available to ensure that you can take on all new packages, etc. So it puts the commissioner mind at rest and obviously feel that they are in safe hands. Other things, for example, the pandemic, PPE stock, etc., and things like financials as regards to what budget have you got for investing in recruiting staff, training, and also funding before you get paid by the local authority. And then you've got the mobilisation plan itself. And again, planning starts way before the tender actually goes live. The contract goes live. So we're looking at pre-contract awards. At the standstill period, again, there's certain things that you might want to do. And again, you need to know what the mobilisation period is going to be before the actual contract starts. And then at what point will you be at business as usual? So again, just very quickly to show you an example here of a mobilisation plan. We've got the tasks down the side. Those are broken down into intermediate tasks and descriptions of what's actually going to be happening, how often that's going to happen, if it's weekly, monthly, or it only occurs once, who's actually going to be in charge of that task, and obviously the status. So this becomes a working document as you're mobilising your contract. And also we've got milestones in there, certain critical points within the mobilisation plan that something has to be completed by before something else can start. So I hope that's given you some sort of insight into how to prepare and write a tender. I know it's only a very short presentation, but thank you very much for listening, and back over to you, Lucy.
Hello, thank you, Cliff. That was great. I hope everyone got a lot out of that. I know that I did. This is the second time I've seen that presentation, but on both occasions I've picked up on some new stuff that's very, very useful for tender writing. So I'm just going to take the next kind of 10 minutes or so to quickly recap on Birdie, who we are, how we can help with tender applications and once you've won. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions. So you can ask both Cliff and myself any questions that may have come up during the presentation. You can use the Q&A box on Zoom to sort of add those in, and the lovely Dia will be sort of picking those up and we'll be asking them at the end. So that's where to whack them in. Right, I'm going to share my screen now. This is always a interesting moment. Okay, So good. I'm getting a nod that you guys can see it. So that is wonderful. So just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Lucy. I work at Birdie, and I've been helping sort of pull together a lot of the content for this particular domiciliary care tenders information. So I hope you're finding it interesting. And of course, as Dia said, if you can give us some feedback on what you've seen today at the end of the webinar, that would be excellent. How does Birdie help with domiciliary care tenders? So first thing is probably to actually explain who Birdie is. So there may be some partners with us on the call, which would be absolutely amazing. And hello, you may know me already. But for those of you who don't know who Birdie is, we are a technology partner for home care. So we're easy to use mobile and desktop software for care delivery, for rostering, and for invoicing, essentially the essential digital tools that you need to run a sort of domiciliary care business. We have about 750 care providers with us using us at the moment. That's 36,000 plus care recipients currently on the Birdie platform. And we deliver about 1.7 million care visits every month. So we are growing, and we're built as an all-in-one purpose tool for home care businesses. And we've just got NHS assured supplier status as well. So if you're looking to access the digital social care funds, then we are an assured supplier. So that's a bit about us. In regards to care tenders, Cliff mentioned the need for evidence quite a lot. So this is where a tool like Birdie can be very, very useful. So one of the things that we provide is a kind of full dashboard for your entire business, covering topics such as care delivery, medication management, travel time, well-led sort of carer feedback, that sort of thing. So we have a full dashboard where you can easily view and pull evidence from just for when you need it. So rather than having to separately pull all of that together off multiple spreadsheets or go through lots of different systems, it's all in one place at your fingertips, ready to go. So this is obviously very useful when it comes to applying for council tenders. We also have built into the software itself a way to help capture compliments and reviews for your service. So there is no better evidence than actually the words of other people. So whether that is reviews from care professionals or sort of family members, Birdie as well allows you to kind of capture all of that in one place. The other tool is obviously the alert management feature. So this is something that many platforms have, but what Birdie does is we try and make that as easy to use and as simple to view as possible. So you're always on top of your alerts and you can resolve them as quickly as possible, which is obviously very, very key for local authorities. Capacity is a huge part of successfully applying for a tender. So not only do you have to demonstrate that your business has the capacity to handle the particular meat of the application, but also that you can grow successfully and that you're not going to struggle for capacity at any point. So Birdie has a number of different tools built into the platform, including this scheduling calendar, which you can kind of see a little bit of in this screenshot, which allows you to not just track your current capacity, whether that's sort of the amount of care professionals you have, the amount of hours you can deliver, the amount of resources you have available, but also to scale that in a sort of easy, sensible, sustainable way. So we have a public product roadmap, which allows you to see what more tools we have like this that are coming. And obviously, if you are already partnered with Birdie, do speak to your customer success manager and find out more about these kind of capacity tools, because it's something that we are looking into a lot at the moment. This is obviously a key point, is so care professionals are at the heart of everything that we do on Birdie. So it's not easy switching to new technology, but it's actually our job to make that switch as simple as possible. So one of the things that we're most proud of is the fact that our tools are very, very easy to use and people can be onboarded onto them in as little as 30 minutes through the Birdie Academy and also our online support centre. So This is obviously good for just switching to new technology in general. But if you are taking on more care professionals as a result of winning the tender, and that is in your mobilization plan, then it's very reassuring to know that you have tools which are very, very easy for them to pick up, and also very effective once they are using them. Safeguarding, very, very important, and something I'm sure as domiciliary care businesses you are doing a lot already. However, it does not hurt to have technology by your side to actually help you demonstrate that. So as mentioned at the beginning, we have the kind of analytics dashboard reports which help you showcase safeguarding across your entire business. We also have the EMAR software, so that comes as standard with many technology suppliers, but Birdie's is again uses the NHS database of medications and is built to sort of make that as accurate and as safe as possible. And then obviously call monitoring, which Cliff mentioned in his presentation, is another feature that Birdie has built into the care management software. So it's all in one place. That's obviously very, very useful for safeguarding. Reporting. So there may be facets of the tender that require you to not just provide reports up front, but to provide regular reports to demonstrate that you are successfully handling it. We use a tool called Looker to get very, very in-depth reports. So as well as you having the kind of overview of your business with Birdie Analytics and that simple dashboard you saw at the beginning, we also use tools which allow you to generate quite specific bespoke reports, depending on the nature of what the local authority is looking to hear more about. Full transparency. So that is obviously, as Cliff mentioned, something which is very, very important, not just in the way that in the whole tender process works nowadays, where everything is up front and everything is clear, but on Birdie, we make sure that kind of there is no aspect of your care business which is, if you're the admin of the account, which is sort of hidden to you. So you're able to share very important data with the local authority, including staffing levels, client caseloads, time spent at business, time spent at visits, and many, many more things. So that third-party sharing is simple and secure and very, very easy to do through Birdie. Risk management. So that's obviously a key part of that as well, this sort of successfully applying for a tender process. So we have clear risk profiles for every user and a very, very simple traffic light system that allows you to allocate visits depending on the need of the client. So again, the EMAR allows you to track medications closely, and we're also able to allow you to provide easy risk assessments in case of emergencies. So all of that is built into the platform, has been designed to sort of save you the heavy lifting of having to pull that from multiple different sources. Getting towards the end there, don't worry. You'll have a chance to ask questions soon, but I just have a few more features that I'm really excited to show you that can definitely help with your council tender applications. One of them is bulk uploading. So one of the things that we heard from our partners was that switching to new technology means uploading lots of different care recipient profiles individually. We have bulk uploading tools that make that a much, much faster process. So obviously when you take on a new council tender, you're likely to be taking on a lot more care recipients. Knowing that you can do that quickly is a bit of a weight off your mind, I'm sure. So that's something that we've built specifically to help our partners grow. Unique invoicing and payments. So depending on the invoicing structure, Birdie has tools that allow you to invoice to individuals, to split invoices, and to create new unique sort of payment structures all in the one place. So again, you're not jumping out into another software provider and then a spreadsheet to do it. You can do it all within Birdie and make sure that everything is linked and tracked. Delivering on KPIs means being able to, again, have complete operational visibility. So as well as that kind of reports dashboard, which shows everything to you in one place, we've got tools such as travel time, medication management, person-centered care, regulatory standards built right into the software that allow you to just manage it easily without having to go above and beyond and put in that extra time to look over it. So I mean, I really like Birdie because all of that has been built directly into it. So it's very simple and very easy to use, rather than you having to do a lot of legwork. And finally, one of the areas where kind of like I sit within Birdie is pulling together experts from all of these different things. So we've got Cliff here from Tenders UK. We often have CQC experts. We've got recruitment and retention experts. One of the things that's really important to us is that we share resources that are actually useful with you. And these will be free. These are ready for you to access. We have ebooks, we'll have webinars like this. We have workshops that go around the country, which is something that Dia, who's also on the call, is responsible for. So we have a whole community at Birdie when you partner with us that is all about the sharing of these resources and sharing of information. So yes, that's a little bit about Birdie, who we are and how we can support with domiciliary council tenders. Hope you enjoyed that. So if you do want to book a demo with us, again, if you already partner with us, welcome, hello. As I said, you may know me already. If you are interested in booking a demo, then there's a sort of link there, but again, the team will be following up with resources, recording of the webinar, ebooks and all that sort of thing. So do take the opportunity to book a demo, whether it's for you, whether it's not for you, why not give it a try? No strings attached. So I think we now have about 10 minutes left for questions. So Cliff, I hope you're still there and still with us. There you go, thank you. And Dia, if you want to sort of lead on sharing some of the questions with us.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for that, Lucy and Cliff, for both of you for the presentations. We do have a number of questions. So here we go. Number one, for Cliff, if you had to give 3 top tips for home care providers to help them win more tenders, what would it be?
Gosh, that's got to be a difficult question. It depends obviously at what stage you're at, and that's the difficulty really, because you don't, unless I know the circumstances of each person or organisation, it's difficult for me to say. But planning is probably the most important thing, and allowing time to be able to write the tender would probably be another. And most importantly is making sure that you submit it with plenty of time, know when the deadline is, and keep an eye on clarification questions, because again, things can change halfway through the job. I've had a situation once where I wasn't privy to the clarifications because it was on a 2-stage process. The client didn't tell me that the questions had changed, and that was a bit of a disaster.
Great, thank you for that. Next question. For a brand new company, how difficult is it to attain a tender? I am an experienced manager starting a new company.
It's very difficult. I mean, there's lots of, it depends where you are in the country as well, because obviously there's certain tenders where they are frameworks, and they're the ones that you should be looking at. Most importantly, where they're not, you haven't got a required turnover requirement. So they're probably the ones that you should best looking for to begin with. DPS frameworks as well. So anything that's a framework with multiple providers are the best thing to target.
Great. Another question. What are market engagements and how can I know when they are happening?
Very good question, actually. You can, I'm just trying to have a quick look now. Find a tender is, if you go onto the government website for Find a Tender, they will let you know of market engagements on there. They publicly have to advertise it on there. Obviously, if you're registered on certain portals, you might see them come up. But the best place to find it is find a tender, which is the government website.
Great, perfect. We had a question around Birdie. Have Birdie worked with a live-in care provider yet, and what are the benefits? And to that, we do work with some supported living suppliers. The best way to understand the full value of Birdie is to request a demo with us. Great. Let me see. There's one more question. It's a little bit long one. In a recent tender, we were asked for something which had nothing to do with the tender. It was a re-enablement tender, and they were asking us to commit to offer training on well-being to the local community, not the service users or staff. My understanding was that they should only ask you to deliver something that is relevant to the tender. Are you able to advise?
Well, that's an interesting one. Again, it's one that you probably should have clarified through the actual tender portal to get more understanding on why they're actually asking that question. That would have been my first address. I would have gone and asked that clarification question. But it could have been to do with social value. Obviously, trying to integrate with community is a big thing now. Or maybe it's just, I mean, I've seen tenders where questions have been, they've used templates and they've kept questions in which actually aren't part of the procurement. So it could just simply be an error.
Great. And I think you touched up on this, but could you maybe go back and tell us where's the best place to find tenders?
Okay. I mean, there's lots of companies that you can register with and you can pay money to find tenders for you. As I say, I mean, there's lots of free websites as well. I mean, one, for example, that I use quite a lot is called BidStats. That's BidStats. So BidStats is quite a useful analytic tool as well. So you can identify what tenders are out, who's been awarded the contracts is always a good thing as well. Finding out who's actually been awarded the contracts. I would say the official website is Find a Tender. Another one I've used in the past was Sell to Wales. That's SELL number 2 Wales. And they ran a free notification service. So again, if you register with them, and they give you all tenders that are coming out in your area, specific areas that you're looking at, be it supported living or extra care or whatever it might be. That will notify you. But again, registering on the tender portals within your local authority, and again, they will send you notifications when tenders come out.
Great, thank you. Let me see, we got 2 more minutes. Do you always require CQC registration before tendering a bid?
In most cases, I mean, there are certain exceptions of 16 to 18-year-olds or 16 to 21. There's sort of a gap in regards to intermediate care and that sort of thing. But I mean, the point being is to deliver care, obviously you have to be CQC registered. That's the most important thing. Some cases they've asked for not just registration, but that you've been inspected and have a CQC rating. So, I mean, I have had a client who was still a nurse. She's still doing a daytime job, hadn't actually delivered any social or domiciliary care within the business. And part of that contract was that even though she was CQC registered, she wasn't going to be able to deliver any care until she's actually been inspected. So although she could actually bid for the tender, she wasn't actually physically able to deliver care until she's been inspected. So she still needs to find private work before she could actually gain that registration. Well, get a CQC inspection.
Great. And I think we just have time for just one last question to Cliff. Are you able to write a tender proposal for 3 companies that are competing in the same area?
In general terms, the answer is no. What we will do is, again, we have this situation where there's conflict of interest. So we can only, if it's a single win contract, we can only actually work with one provider. In certain cases where there may be different geographical areas that different providers are going for, we might work with multiple providers. Or if it's a standard framework where it's just to get onto the framework, again, we can work with multiple providers in those situations. But as a single win contract, no, you can't.
Great. Thank you so much, Cliff. And thank you so much, Lucy. And thank you everyone who joined us today. That brings us to the end of our session. As we mentioned before, please be on the lookout in your inboxes. We will be sharing the recorded version of this webinar as well as other resources. And if you have any questions for us, please do follow up with us through our email, and you can also book a demo on our website if you're interested in working with Birdie. So thank you everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.